Score Big is the leading online marketplace for tickets to sports, concerts, theater, and family events.
Score Big allows you to purchase last-minute tickets to sold-out events. Also, the latest on sales of popular artists, teams, and productions. They'll get you in.
They safeguard your transaction with a 100% money-back guarantee under a secure checkout with interactive seat maps to guide your purchase.
And whether it's an Atlanta Braves game, Metallica concert, or a WWE event, they've got you covered.
Book your seats now at tinyurl.com/P3events.
That's tinyurl.com/P3events.
Welcome to P3 Radio.
The monkey only dances as good as the guy grinding the organ handle.
Demolition! We're coming for you, baby!
That was my moment of I carried a watermelon.
And if you're going to call me back tomorrow, whatever,
You better believe I took my turn a little bit.
What?
Cool story, bro.
PG3 Radio.
Here's your host, Josh Riley.
Ladies and gentlemen, next up we have crying little blind children.
Richard Mullican.
I don't know. Is this making any sense to anybody out there?
It's showtime! It's showtime! It's showtime!
Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to another episode of P3 Radio. I'm Richard Mullican, joined by my co-host and best friend, Josh Briley. Say hey, Josh.
I'm feeling a little dangerous today, Richard,
Why is that, Josh?
because we have none other than Dangerous Danny Davis on the hotline today.
Yeah, Dangerous Danny Davis, for those of you that don't know, is not the same Danny Davis that we know. He's not the Memphis legend that trained people in OVW. This is Dangerous Danny Davis. Think Heart Foundation. Think WrestleMania 3.
Think original heel referee.
Well, he's got a book coming out this month. We're going to talk to him, get all the details about that. But first, we got to take a commercial break from
P3 Florida. Florida Ticket Station. Florida. Your one-stop shop for discounted tickets on all of Orlando's best theme parks. Orlando. All of Orlando's local attractions. Orlando. All of Orlando's events. Fucking Orlando. All of Orlando's local attractions. Orlando. And so much more. Yeah. They offer affordable tickets to Disney World, Mickey Mouse, Universal Studios, Back to the Future, SeaWorld, Whale, Legoland, everything is awesome, Busch Gardens, I don't know what that is, and so much more.
But seriously, Josh, they are licensed and insured with the state of Florida.
Florida.
So you can rest assured that your reservations are valid. Summer's coming and vacation time's right around the corner.
Round the corner.
So go to tinyurl.com/P3Florida and book your Orlando vacation today. tinyurl.com/P3Florida.
P3 Florida.
Welcome back to more P3 Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, joining us on the P3 Radio hotline right now, former WWF referee and wrestler who has a book out right now called Mr. X, The Story of Dangerous Danny Davis. Mr. Davis, thank you for being here with us today.
Well, thank you, Rich. How you been? Everything all right?
Everything's great. We are honored to have you. Like I said, you were one of those guys we watched growing up in a great era of WWF and great era of wrestling, and we are just happy to have you on with us today.
Well, I'm happy to be here, and I'm glad you called it the greatest era. I think it's the greatest era in wrestling of all time. I don't think it'll ever be duplicated. We did some great things back then. It was revolutionary. I mean, we brought wrestling into the limelight, into where it is today, and I was very proud to be part of it.
Researching for this interview, you had a pretty tough childhood growing up, and you used to do shoot fights for a living?
Well, yes, sir. That's probably a good time to put in what the book is about.
Yeah.
Because this book is part of that is part of the book is my upbringing as a young kid. being a street kid, being a street fighter and stuff like that. And it goes on to give you some specifics onto that. But this book, myself and Kenny Casanova from WOHW Publishing decided to write a book, but we had to make it a book because everybody's writing a wrestling book. And for a couple of years, he was bugging me about doing a book, and I was kind of hesitant because everybody, does the same thing, kind of, sort of, does a autobiography and tells stories about road stories and stuff like that. But my book had to be different, and that's what I told Kenny when he approached me on it. So we kicked it around for a couple of years, really, and finally we come up with a concept of my background as a street kid, and then coming up through the ranks in wrestling and achieving a goal and achieving a dream. So this book is an inspirational book for young adults especially. But anybody can read this book. You don't have to be a wrestling fan per se to enjoy this book. And it's a book that you can come back and reference as you're living your life and trying to achieve your dreams. And we're just trying to let kids know and young adults know, and anybody really, that with a lot of hard work and work ethic, you can reach your goals. And when you reach a goal or a dream or achieve a dream or live a dream, there's no words to describe it. And I'm living proof of that. So I hope that everybody will enjoy this book and get to read it.
That's awesome.
What's your first memory of seeing pro wrestling, whether it be on TV or in person?
Well, my first memory was very easy for me to remember because it was with my bigger sister. My older sister brought me to wrestling one time. And where I live now, there was an arena. And it was called Jack Witchy's Arena. And every Friday night, rain, snow, sleet, hail, whatever, they had a wrestling match there. And that was the days of Baron Cicluna and Chief Jay Strongbow and a lot of the greats. And I went there for my first time when I was about 11 years old, 12 years old. And I witnessed my first wrestling match. And I was hooked. Right? I was hooked.
How did you go about getting into the business?
Well, that's how it developed. I knew from that day forward that somehow, some way, I was going to be part of that wrestling business. I'm sure that at that age, it was just a dream. And everybody told me, no, you have to be this, you got to be that. You'll never do this. Because I was a street kid, I wanted to. So what happened was I used to hang around outside the door at Witchy's on Friday night, and I would carry the bags for the wrestlers who showed up from the car to the door, the back door, and they would go in, and they would thank me, I was hoping to get a ticket or whatever. So one day, I happened to be in the right place at the right time, and the guy who was setting the rings up, and that wasn't at Jack Witchy's because there was a ring there all the time, but he set rings up around the New England area for way back.
Right.
And he said, look, I'll give you a couple tickets if you come around with me, and I'll get you into the wrestling matches and if you can meet me at certain places and help me put the ring up.
Right.
So I said, sure, and I would do that. And that's how it started. I started putting rings up with this guy, and then the rest of the story's in the book, but that's basically how I started.
In my opinion, like I said before, you were part of the WWF in one of the best time periods ever for wrestling. And I'm biased by that because, like I said, this is when I was growing up and you guys were bigger than life itself. You were comic book heroes for me. What was it like working for the WWF in the 80s and 90s? I mean, what was the travel schedule like?
Well, it was brutal, really brutal. We would wrestle sometimes, as the events, we would wrestle sometimes 9 times a week.
Wow.
We would get on. We'd have an afternoon show in Boston, say, and then we would get on a Learjet or a plane, and we'd fly to the West Coast and have a show that night.
Wow.
And then we would get on a plane after that and come back down, go down to Texas that night. Get up in the morning and have a matinee on Saturday afternoon. Get on a plane and go up to Canada for an evening flight. Leave that place, go down into Boston for a matinee there, and get on another plane and fly to the Midwest and have a show that night.
Wow.
And that was on a weekend. That was just a weekend. Then we'd wrestle Monday through Friday every night. So yeah, it was a pretty tough schedule. But and it was, how can I put it? It was brutal, but we did it, and we knew what we were doing because we were developing a product that was going to be great. I mean, we were taking over territories at that time, as you know. We were crisscrossing into different territories, which was never done before. And to be part of something like that, you could see what was going on. And the houses were great. The fans, especially the fans, they followed us wherever we went. And they're the greatest fans in the world, in my opinion. And I'm biased in that way because these fans supported us through, they would show up during a blizzard. They would show up during an ice storm. They were dedicated. And we enjoyed, performing for them and putting on a show for them. And most of the guys, they always gave 100% every night for these people. But the fans, you can't beat the fans.
Well, you brought up you guys were taking over territories at the time, and Hulk Hogan in his book, he had wrote about when WWE was coming through Kansas City, and Harley Race came in and threatened to set the ring on fire. Did you ever come in contact with one of those moments where it was like, okay, we might have some trouble here trying to take over this territory because of so much heat from the guys that's been running this area for so long?
No, not the guys per se. I mean, they didn't blame us.
Right.
We were just, we were going where we were booked. It wasn't our fault that we were in there doing the thing. The people that were upset would probably have more success on taking it out on Vince in some way, like try to sabotage the show, like,
right.
Put ads on it that were coming and don't go and stuff like that. But we never ran into anybody who stopped us and said, look, you guys can't do this here and stuff like that. No, that never happened. It was all taken care of before we went into the town.
How long were you refereeing before your first match, and what are your memories of your first match?
Oh my goodness. My memories, I refereed for a long, long time before I became a Mr. X, as you know.
Right.
And I wrestled as Mr. X for a long time. And my first match, well, again, it's in the book. My first match was an exciting time for anybody who had a dream of becoming a wrestler, had a dream being a street kid coming up through the hard times and stuff like that, to actually be in a ring or an arena and having people out there watching you. I thought then that I had achieved my dream of becoming a wrestler, and little did I know that dream would be even greater as I went on with my career. As you know, I turned into Dangerous Danny Davis, and then, of course, the rest is history. So, yeah, it was it's like I said at the beginning of this, there's no way to describe for me or anybody else other than, the pride you have when you achieve one of your dreams or live one of your dreams. And that's the only way I can explain it. And unless you've done that, and, you will not realize how it feels to achieve that goal.
Now, my grandmother, she made gear for tons of wrestlers in the business, and whether it be Lawler or Bullet Bob Armstrong, just any guy that went through the Southeast, whatever territory,
right.
It was always word of mouth. Who made your mask for Mr. X?
Well, it was, as you know, there were many, many guys who would go in as Mr. X, and usually it was used, the name Mr. X was used when the cards needed to be filled out. So somebody would wrestle twice that night. They would come out in a different outfit and put a mask on and say, go out as Mr. X, usually do a job. And then he'd go up in the back, and of course he would come out as his character at that time and have another match. So it was usually, but my masks were, actually I bought these masks from someone who was coming through the territory, and I don't remember even who it was, but he had a bunch of them with him. And I asked him, I said, do you have a mask you could sell me, And he says, hey, I have a lot of masks, He says, and I want to get rid of them all. So I bought them all. I had orange and red, yellow and red. I had green. I had black. I had one with a star on it. And And I had like 8 masks, so I would have a different mask for every night practically.
Well, Josh is being really modest here, and I grew up with him as his best friend. His grandmother was an excellent seamstress. Chances are, if you had a mask with a star on it, you probably had one that she made. She was making it for all these guys, and like I said, she was doing stuff for guys that were coming in from WWE, like the Truth Commission back when it was in the 90s and stuff like that. So it wasn't odd to see like Honky Tonk Man or somebody over at her house. So chances are you may have had a mask made by her. So that's pretty cool.
What was her name?
Betty Briley.
Yeah, it was
Betty Briley.
Yeah, she was I talked to you earlier and I said we actually have connection here in a way because his uncle was kind of like my uncle too. We grew up together like brothers. Right. His uncle was the other Danny Davis. He was the one that wrestled in the Nightmare Danny Davis. He wrestled in Memphis.
Yep. Sure, of course, sure.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I'm sure that I probably had one of her masks, or at least. Well, and another thing, I bought some tights, a black outfit, black tights, and with a stripe down the side, which was common back then, black boots from another guy who was either getting out of the business or I had it to sell. So that's where I got my outfits at the beginning. Right. And then of course, I had someone make the Danny Davis outfit. WWF at the time had that done for me. So they came up with they had people there that do that. Specifically do that. They come up with a character and they come up with an outfit to wear. So that's where I got my other brigade, as we'll say, wrestling tights. Yeah.
Right. Well, anytime you have men in a competitive atmosphere, just like me and Josh, we grew up, like I said, like brothers. Anytime you're around those many people at the same time, you're going to have conflict. Do you remember seeing or being a part of any kind of locker room scuffles? And you don't have to mention names, but what was the atmosphere like in the 80s? Was it kind of like a measuring contest, or was everybody just kind of happy to be on the card?
Well, like I said earlier, we were all working for one goal.
Right.
And that goal was to bring wrestling throughout the world, throughout America and beyond, Middle East, Europe, and all that stuff. So everybody had their spot. Everybody had their job. And everybody knew that. And everybody, I would say the majority of people were happy to be there. But, there was some, I wouldn't say conflict, but there were guys, as you pointed out, thought that they should be in a spot that another guy was in. But they never came to, I want that spot or something like that, because again, we all work together. And if you didn't work together, Vince McMahon would just say, look, thank you for your time, but this is what we're going to do. This is how it's going to be. And if you want to be part of this, fine. If you don't, then, you're welcome to leave,
Right. It's hard to dance by yourself. It's better to have a partner.
Right.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So you got to work together. And the referees even were part of it, working together with everybody. And it was one big machine and everything worked together. And again, and I don't want to be repetitive, but if you don't want to be there, if you didn't want to be part of it, you didn't have to be.
Right.
It was as simple as that, because there was 8 guys or 10 guys right behind you just waiting for your spot that could do your job.
Exactly.
And could take over your spot. And if you weren't careful, and if you didn't show up on time, you didn't give 100% out there, and you weren't working out, and you weren't staying on the straight and narrow, then you were gone.
I went back and watched one of the most memorable moments that I can remember with you in it, which was WrestleMania. And it was WrestleMania 3. And I watched that match back, and I don't know if anybody on that whole entire card had more heat than you did. When you tagged in, and you immediately got boos just for tagging in. You put 3 boots to the guy and tag out and get a chorus of boos. Like the loudest reaction that you could hear for a heel get. Do 3 moves and then tag out and get a louder reaction. What was it like? What was going through your head? Did you have goosebumps or anything like that? Did you even know how special it was?
No, I knew it was special the minute I through the whole thing, beginning to end. I knew that it was a special moment in wrestling history. I knew it was a special moment in my life. I knew it was a special moment in everybody's life that was there,
awesome.
fans included. And when I got on that cart and was going down that aisle on that cart, and the people were just, booing me, and like you said, everything was working, everything was. But I didn't never paid attention to the people there. I mean, I knew the fans were there and stuff like that, but I was there to do my job, and I was going to give 110% to these people who came to see me, and I did that. And this is what happens when you have determination and you have hard working. I worked hard for that spot. I worked so hard for that spot in that moment in my life. My whole life, came to a head in that moment in time. And I wasn't going to let it go, and nobody was going to take it away from me. And now, no one can take it away from me ever, because I was part of the biggest card in history. And as you know, I was over. And and that I worked hard for that. And everybody around me worked hard to see that happen too. So I can't take all the credit, because the people you work for, if they don't want to work with you, then you might as well go home. But these guys were great. Tito Santana, the British Bulldogs, Brett and Jimmy Hart. How can you beat it? They were the greatest tag teams of all time, in my opinion. They were so hot that I don't know. I was just in a great place, and I wasn't going to let it go by. So you asked me how it felt. It's indescribable.
Right. I mean, honestly, we come from the Memphis territory, so Jimmy Hart was a heat magnet for us immediately. But when you go to watching WrestleMania 3 and seeing that reaction, it is second to none. There is nobody that can take that away from you. You were probably one of the hottest people on that card that night, and people really wanted to see you just get beat up. And as a heel, being a heel myself at times, there is no bigger compliment than wanting people to have your head on a stick.
Isn't that something? It was great. People tell me today, "Oh, I hated you. Oh, I hated you." and I just look at him and said, "If you hated me, I did my job." And and I'm glad you hated me. Thank you very much. But yeah, it's a great feeling. I mean, you're doing your job. And as they say in the business, you're over. And I was over big time. And I was, as I say, I wasn't going to let it go. I wasn't going to let that. I was going to do my best, and I wasn't going to wrestle like everybody else. I wasn't going to take bumps like everybody else. I was going to be Dangerous Danny Davis, and I was going to let people enjoy every minute of that match. And we swerved them. I actually got a win. Yeah. So.
I was telling Josh, you might be the last undefeated person now that Undertaker's lost. You might be the last undefeated person at WrestleMania.
There you go.
Did you ever have any trouble with the fans that would recognize you on the streets?
Oh yeah. See, you got to be professional at all times, And we go to the bars at night, and have a couple beers after the show at the hotel we were staying at, a local bar that everybody went to throughout. Again, I was going to say history, but when we went into a town, there were places we would go, specific places, and the bartenders and everybody would, kind of take care of us. But you always had a few guys there a few people had a little bit too much and wanted to fight you and wanted to take it out on you. But you got to be professional. Some guys would just, take care of business and how should I say it? And end it before it started, But most of us would just take it with a grain of salt, and the people that were around us that owned the bars or whatever would generally, get rid of the troublemakers right away and take care of it for us, the bouncers or whatever they had on there that night. But if we needed to, we were more than capable of. We would show them that it wasn't all bullshit.
We talked to Superstar Bill Dundee not too long ago, and he was talking about the guys the old women that would come at you with purses and nail files and stuff like that. So
oh yeah.
I can't imagine the heat that you had. I can't imagine. And this was a time when you guys were on national television. So not only are you getting the regional heat, you're getting the national heat as being this cheating referee, which everybody already hates, by the way. They already assume that referees are crooked in like NFL or the NBA. So when you're playing that character, and you're playing it great, by the way. So when you see that, it's instant heat. So I imagine you had a few times where some fan tried to test the limits.
Well, you don't know. You go into a restaurant, someone recognizes you. What if it's the cook? What if it's the waitress? And most of the time that's what we're doing. You guys, I know you guys. And oh shit, you say to yourself, oh God, oh boy, what am I going to get tonight to eat? And stuff like that. Or a taxi cab driver or anybody.
Right.
You got to be real careful because you can get poisoned or whatever. And like you say, people would walk in front of you on purpose and try to start fighting with you and stuff like that. But, and again, when you went into the arena especially, you had to be careful. And I had to be extra careful. A lot of times they would tell me, look, just walk down the center of the aisle, stay in the center, and when you get done with the match, come right back out. Don't fool with anybody. Don't talk to anybody. Don't approach anybody because, people wanted to kill me.
Right.
There were threats. There were threats. They were going to get me that night, and they would wait in the parking lot and all that stuff for us and everything else. But we really, believe it or not, I never had to have I never had any altercations. I mean, I always walked away, professionally. I didn't let people put their hands on me, but usually it was handled, with diplomacy and, just get away from me and get in the car and leave or whatever. They had things throwing bottles at the car and stuff like that, nagging the car and letting the air out of your tires while you were in the arena or whatever, coming out with four flat tires or whatever, the windshield broken or whatever. But that's part of the business back then. I don't think it happens as much today. I even had my car towed one time. Yeah, I come out to get my car, it was gone. They come in and say, your car's been towed. And, geez. It was a rental car, and I had to go get it towed, But, but that happened to everybody, not just me.
Right.
But,
well,
but like you said, it was the height of, wrestling, and everybody was,
Davey Boy Smith was part of the British Bulldogs, and he was known, and you worked with him a lot with the British Bulldogs and everything, and he was known as a great ribber. Who would you say was one of the best ribbers in the locker room at the time, and what was one of the best ribs that you ever saw?
Well, I would have to say Owen Hart was one of the best ribbers. All right. Mr. Fuji, without a doubt, he'll go down in history as one of the greatest ribbers of all time. But that was, and the best rib one of the best ribs I thought of, and I don't know who did it, and I really don't know who did it, but we were at TV one time, and they had a big coffee urn there. The catering would put a big coffee urn in the middle of the hallway so that everybody could get coffee and however they wanted it, because it was a long day and it was TV tapings and stuff like that. And someone put volumes in the coffee urn.
Wow.
So everybody was walking around yawning and tired and falling asleep. So we don't know who did that, but the whole dressing room was everybody sleeping, kind of trying to stay awake, and no one could figure out why everybody was so tired. And then later on, we found out that someone had done that, spiked the coffee.
That's awesome.
That was just one rib. That's just one rib. I mean, that's about. But we never found out who did it. But we have our suspicions.
What was it like the day after Hacksaw Duggan and Iron Sheik got pulled over on the Jersey Turnpike? Just backstage, was it doom and gloom or just another day?
Well, we were in New Jersey, and we were in Nassau Coliseum. That's where we were, and that happened. And he was stuck for a ride, and one of them was stuck for a ride. And they decided to ride together, which was very, very stupid on both their parts.
Right.
And then they get pulled over. When you set yourself up in a situation where things can go wrong, they usually do. And both of them are smarter than that. And I don't know, I never got the real story as to why it happened or how it took. All I know is one of them needed a ride, and the money they were making, rent a car. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Rent a car. You don't go out with a guy you got, you're working with, and because again, as I said. You don't set yourself up for stuff like that, especially in this business. And it killed them both. I mean, that was the end of their tenure, sort of, in he could never come back from that. And it's an expose, and it's kind of exposed the business too.
Yeah.
And it really did. And this business has been exposed and dumped on, and everything imaginable has happened in this business, and you don't need to add to it. So that's probably all I have to say about that. But they're both great guys, and they're both smarter than that, especially Duggan. I mean, he knows better. So.
Yeah. And I mean, Duggan actually came out and said his dad was a police officer. And said that he actually came up to him and was like, come on, man. So Duggan kind of owned up to it a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, rest my case. Duggan knew better. Hey, what the hell? It's like a kid, putting his hand in a fire. It's going to, or you're putting your hand in a fan. You know what I'm saying? You don't do that stuff.
The 1987 King of the Ring was totally different for you as far as from 86 when you were substituting as Mr. X. You made it to the third round, but you lost to the Macho Man. Did you enjoy working with Randy?
Randy Savage was one of the greatest workers I ever worked with. He was phenomenal. He was smooth. He was, on time. That his timing was there. He had the psychology. All you had to do was listen and stand there and do what he asked you to do, and you have a great match with him. And it was phenomenal to work with Randy. And I was kind of starry-eyed. He was one of the greats.
Oh yeah.
And there you are in the semifinal with him. I mean, how do you top that? I mean, but everything kept happening. Better things kept happening, for me. And it's just, as we went along, it's just, you realize that, you're really part of this, and this is what you got to do, and it's a great thing. It's in your pride. Right. And it was near my hometown. So all my family was there and everything else. It was great. It was just something that, you look around and you say, God, bless me, for all the good things he's given me,
Well, I remember thinking back in that time period, I was thinking, when the third round came around, I was like, oh my God, this guy may actually beat the Macho Man. He may actually advance to the finals.
That would have been doom and gloom for us as Randy Savage fans.
Well, I mean, they let you win on the BS, countouts and this and that.
Yeah,
and I was, oh my God, he's going to win. I mean,
for the hated ref, that would have been horrible.
That's what you were supposed to believe, man.
Yeah, exactly.
And we fed you. You guys believed it, and that's what we wanted you to believe. And I'm glad. It got over. That's great.
We have been told ever since, I wrestled for 12 years. Josh has been around wrestling all his life too. You're told this isn't ballet. And you know it as well as I do. That ring hurts every time you hit it. But what was one of the worst injuries that you have seen in professional wrestling?
And then I have seen, we got a TV tape, and I saw a kid get crippled from the neck down. That was probably the worst one I ever saw. It was just a simple thing, and it happens, And you see, he'll never walk again or move again. I mean, he's gonna, and I'm sure that, and I can't say this for a fact. It's all speculation, but they said that the WWF or whoever the W still takes care of him, sees that he's at least got, So that's stuff that people don't know about the wrestling world. I don't know. I heard that, and I'm sure that's true, but I can't say it as a fact. I never saw any, but it was a terrible thing that happened, and a lot of guys who thought they were ready to step into the ring actually had very little training or whatever like that. I felt bad for, and I would always caution them to be on the side of caution going out there, and but sometimes things happen, and I was just it makes you think, it makes you wonder, when you go out there every night and you're going out there 9 times a week, you're putting your life in your hands every time you step into that ring. Right. You could be crippled, you could come out of there dead, and that's happened also in our business, and that's one thing that the fans don't really, want to think about or even think about, but when you go out in that ring, as I just pointed out, right, you're taking your life in your hands every night to entertain the greatest fans in the world. And, when they say at all costs, that's exactly what you're doing. So it's given back to the fans, and I just hope that in the future nothing like that ever takes place.
Yeah, they run that ad every time saying don't try this at home, and most of the times kids will try to do body slams and small suplexes on each other, but you got to really hope that the kids aren't really trying to do the power bombs and the pile drivers and stuff like that. And, they kind of keep it to pillows instead of chairs, right?
But that ring is, as you just pointed out, that ring is not, everybody says, oh, it's padded and stuff like that. Well, it's not padded very much, and it's plywood and iron underneath of it.
Right.
And every time, I had doctors tell me every time you get slammed or you take a bump, your body, your insides jiggle. They move.
Right.
There's nothing holding them in place. And when you hit your head, your brain sloshes against the sides of your head and stuff like that, and being tipped upside down, your blood pressure and stuff like that, it doesn't, it's just so many things that can go wrong. You get dizzy it's just so many things. But that ring is not a soft place to land at any point in time, especially when someone 300 pounds picks you up and drives you through that mat. I mean, as it's a wrestling move, but still it hurts. And
right.
I mean, you look at Harley Race and all these guys, these older guys, Billy Graham, and all these just are revolting against them because of all the damage they've done to them over the years. Right. Their joints and their hips and all that. It's it's a price you pay. So it is a high price.
You competed in the first Royal Rumble match. Was Vince hesitant about trying out this style of match on national TV?
Vince McMahon Jr. was one of the, I don't know how he did it, but he had foresight. I mean, he saw what was happening before anybody else did and realized the potential of what he could do with the wrestling. It's no more, as he would say, a girl and a six-pack, every night. It was going to go into this, and that's what I alluded to earlier. That if you don't want to be part of this, don't, because the things are changing. You're not going to be able to go out to the bars and fist fight and brawl. You're not going to be in the streets doing the things you come well dressed, you come groomed, you come in there and you give 100%. You do what you're supposed to do. And that's the way it was. And he had the foresight, and to bring wrestling into the 21st century. That with the cable and the TV and the national networks, and then the computers coming in. How he worked that. I mean, and he just took chances, and he was the first one to do the pay-per-views, and the WrestleManias, and they didn't call it pay-per-view at the time. I forget what they called it, but he just had the foresight.
Yeah, closed circuit.
Closed circuit, yes, closed circuit TV, and that was the beginning. And he had the foresight, and he just brought everything into the 21st century. The outfits were glamorous, the music, the lights, the whole nine yards. And he went out on limbs, and sometimes everybody thought he went a little too far out on limbs, but he always seemed to bounce back, and it always seemed to be a success. And look what he's done to it. It's no more, $2 hot dogs and beer, throwing beer cans. It's in the 21st century, and it's a glamorous and a thing. I don't know how they're doing financially or anything like that, because I'm out of it. But you have to give them credit. You have to give them credit, and to be part of that. We were the ones that did it. And you alluded to it earlier. It was the greatest, bar none, greatest time in wrestling history. Were those years, were the Hogan years, and the Dangerous Danny Davis years, and the Hart Foundation years. All those guys, all of us, we worked hard.
I mean, like I said, you guys were comic book characters, but we spoke earlier about renting a car and choosing your riding partners closely. Who was the guys that you like to ride with, and do you have any good road stories that you can tell?
Well, I rode I rode with a lot of guys, and the stories are just, I give you a short one. I was riding with one guy, not to mention any names, but he said he was driving along, and he said, let me know if you get tired. I said, gee, thanks. I'll let you know. He says, yeah, let me know, and I'll reach across and slap you and wake you up. Just that, and that, then we started laughing and telling jokes and stuff like that. But that's just one little story. I mean, there's so many great stories that I could tell you, but you'd have to involve people names and stuff like that to appreciate it and stuff like that. I would just assume, But some of the stories you heard were so fantastic and great that you made it a pleasure. You try to make it a pleasurable trip. I mean, I was with a bunch of guys one time and we rode 3.5 hours the wrong way.
Oh, gotta love it.
I mean, we all fell asleep. We woke up and the guy driving had taken the wrong turn. And we woke up and we said, where are we, man? We should be there by now. And he says, we're almost there, I think. I don't know what's going on. And we pull over. In them days, there wasn't GPS and stuff like that or anything like that. So we saw the sign. We had a map, a map book in our car, the Atlas, and we started looking at where we were. Christ, we were 3 hours in the wrong direction. so needless to say, we got to the venue late, and we got a little scolding for it, but that's just a couple, yeah. But it's just great, to be with these guys. It was just something that happened every day. It was always fun, but there was some times that weren't so good either,
Right. What would you say is the best piece of advice that you received early on in wrestling?
Okay, and this is what I tell everybody when they ask me that question. One of the greatest wrestlers of all times came up to me, and he said, listen to me. He said, you're doing well, and you probably do well in this business. He said, but I'm going to tell you something now, and I want you to listen, but you do with it what you want. He says, I've been wrestling for X amount of years. He says, and I've always been successful, and I'll tell you my secret, one of my secrets. He said, if you go out in that arena and there's 10,000 people there, you work hard, you give 100%. And if there's 10 people in that arena or 20 people in that arena, you work just as hard for those 10 or 20 than you do for that 10,000. You keep that in your mind when you go out in that arena. A lot of these guys go out there and do a 2 or 3 minute match. You go out there and give 110% every time to these people who work hard, who work at McDonald's, who work, behind, shoveling crap behind cows and stuff like that, and pay that hard-earned money to bring their family to see you. You remember what I just told you, and you'll be successful, and that's the greatest advice I ever got.
Well, you can pick up his book right now, Mr. X, The Life Story of Dangerous Danny Davis. Mr. Davis, where can they get that book?
You go on DangerousDannyDavis.com, an autographed book or just a book, and there's other pictures and other books, Kamala's books there, and Brutus Beefcake's books there. You can order them there too. So
once again, go pick that book up, Mr. X, The Life and Story of Dangerous Danny Davis. It has been an honor to have you on, Mr. Davis, and anytime you want to come back and talk to us, we'd be proud to have you on.
All right, Rick and Josh, you guys take care of yourself, and God bless you.
When you go shopping for wine, do you look at the labels? Do you stare at the price and wonder if the wine is worth the expensive tag? Well, stop it, because Wine of the Month Club has you covered. Every month, Wine of the Month Club is going to send you 2 bottles of high-quality wine right to your front door.
And what better way to say I'm thinking of you than a subscription to the original Wine of the Month Club for a friend or a sweetheart. Each month they'll be reminded of your thoughtfulness and will receive the monthly wine letter and newsletter binder. Recipes, wine knowledge, and great wine, and the opportunity to get more of their favorites is at hand. Give with confidence and joy, knowing that you're a part of the original Wine of the Month Club.
By the way, there are no dues, no fees, no hidden charges. Cancel anytime with no obligation. Just pay no more than $23.96 plus shipping for 2 great bottles of wine. Go there now. Sign up by visiting our link, tinyurl.com/P3wine. That's tinyurl.com/P3wine. The Wine of the Month Club, the original wine club since 1972.
He speaks fluent Klingon, backwards. The best story he's ever told was to himself. Of the 2 women he's slept with in his life, one fell asleep, the other thought he was someone else. Dogs take him for walks. He is the world's most semi-interesting man.
I don't often smoke, but when I do, I only choose Vista Vapors.
Visit them today at tinyurl.com/P3Vista.
Keep it flavorful, my friends.
Well, the sound of that song means we've reached the end of another episode of P3 Radio. We'd like to thank Dangerous Danny Davis for being a part of today's episode. And we'd like you to follow us on Facebook at Pop Poncho or on Twitter at P3Radio1. Send us an email at p3radio1@gmail.com or give us a call at 731-300-MORT. That's 731-300-6675. For Josh Briley, this is Richard Mulligan saying thank you once again and good night.